Hi, welcome to the Heart and Science of Creative Leadership podcast. I'm Bill Coletti, and today we've got a great guest, Monique Farmer, who is in Omaha, Nebraska, and is the owner of Avant Solutions, and a great journey. And a couple things I want you to listen out for in the conversation. You know, one is kind of the birth of the firm, that it was a firm that had been going. She had started. She made an entrepreneurial pivot coming out of both work in the government, but also work in the school system to start her own firm. But then really neat program that Goldman Sachs does for small business owners that I think she attributes as a really important growth trajectory for her firm. And then the second thing, as a leader, the way she makes herself available as a mentor. And I'm just hearing more and more that leadership of these firms have so much to do with bringing others along, whether it's the generosity of content, whether it's mentorship for others, it's being in the community. And Monique does a really, really great job of doing that. And the way Avant serves is really, really valuable. So I think you're going to learn a lot from this conversation. I know I did. I really enjoyed spending my time with her. And we also talk about some of the issues as a woman of color and some of the opportunities as well as some of the challenges that's created for her in the marketplace. So I hope you'll enjoy the conversation that I had with Monique Farmer from Avant Solutions. Thanks so much. Welcome to the Heart and Science of Creative Leadership. I'm Bill Coletti, and today I'm joined by Monique Farmer. Monique is a new friend, but I quickly becoming a fast friend. And so real excited to have a conversation with her about her leadership journey. So Monique, welcome. I'm glad you're here.
Thank you, Bill. I really appreciate you extending the opportunity to have this discussion. Looking forward to it.
Well, that's awesome. So do the quick 45-second intro of your firm, where you are, what you do, and we'll get into your backstory a little bit later, but just sort of level set on what you own and why you do it.
Awesome. Well, I own a public relation and communications firm based out of Omaha, Nebraska. This is my 23rd year in the field of PR, and I recently worked on my personal branding statement, so let's give it a whirl here. I am the communication expert who helps clients simplify and organize their communication plans to achieve the results they seek. Avant Solutions is in its 5th year, headed to the top of 25, ready for the adventures of our 6th year. So that is my quick introduction.
That is awesome. So let's start right there. So a lot of folks that I work with and a lot of agency owners struggle to sort of say what they do. And they often sort of do it by process of elimination. Well, we don't do employee and we don't do financial and we don't do crisis. And so by process of elimination, people sort of figure out what they do. It sounds like you're being very intentional and you want to be sort of proactive about this is what we do, this is who we serve. So why is that type of branding statement, that type of vocabulary, why is that important for you as a leader? And why is that important for your team and your firm?
Oh man, that's such a great question. I think the simplicity of it, right, Bill? We work in these industries. We've spent X amount of years like honing our skill set, getting all the degrees and getting the certifications. What happens to us, I think, unbeknownst to us in the midst of becoming the best possible version of our professional selves that we can, is that we kind of get stuck in it, right? Like we're too close to the forest to see the trees. And so we need our own reminders to get out of the jargon and to speak to the client. So the benefit of that, when I can do that well and my team can do it well, is it's simple for the client to know whether we have a solution potentially to the pain point that they're experiencing that would make us good partners.
And have you found, as you trial with vocabulary and that branding statement, have you found that it clarifies your business development and simplifies your business development because who you're talking to immediately can say yes or no, they can serve us? And is it too much to ask that statement to sort of short circuit or help the business development cycle? Do you think about it in that context?
Yeah, and full disclosure, I'd say we're probably in the early stages of being that level of simple. I do often have conversations with people where I'll be talking about what I do, and it could be like a friend or somebody in my network, and they'll say, "Oh, I didn't realize you did that." because especially
That's
when we're
terrible.
thinking about public relations, right? And I teach one course for University of Texas at Austin. It's asynchronous, so it's all online. It is undergrads, but they're often they're getting their first taste of PR. Like when they come to my class, a new cohort every semester, they're basically kind of like, well, what's public relations? Like they have not necessarily had any public relations courses. They've had journalism. But the thing that I like to help them understand is when we think about any field, right? Like think about being a healthcare professional or a legal professional. There's often so many specializations underneath the umbrella. And so I guess what I find is when I say I do public relations to someone who is not in the field, they don't really know what I mean. They don't have any idea what the day-to-day is involved with that. And so it's very helpful for me to make that as simple as possible so that they can understand whether they need our support or our services.
Yeah. So on my journey at my firm and other people that I work with, there's this concept around high strategy, low tactics. And so you find people in that confused state that you just described is that I just want press. Just get me in the newspaper or get me on the TV. And I can almost read your mind that that's the tactic. There's so much more strategy that goes in. And so when you get, let's say, an unsophisticated purchaser, an unsophisticated client that like just wants get me in the paper or get me the press, how do you navigate them and educate them up so that you can actually serve them better at a strategic level? So how do you elevate your client?
Yeah. So first and foremost, I go back to thinking about who we're trying to attract with the simplicity of how we explain who we are and what we do. I think it all starts with vetting, right? Neither one of us wants to waste our time. So we really, really work hard and diligently on the front end to find out whether we're going to be a good match in the first place. And there's a number of ways that you can do that. For us, we recently learned a way that essentially involves thinking about who our best clients are and let's make clones of those folks, right? Based on who they are.
Real clients, not imaginary.
Real clients, real ones,
clients. Okay.
ones. Like looking back over, we're 5 years old. So we can look back through billing. We know what those experiences and what those projects were. Who do we have the best experience with? Was it a service that we like to sell, that we specialize in, that we're in an area that we're growing in, and identifying who those people are. And it's kind of creepy, the science of it, because we have our avatar for that and they're very similar. And so us knowing on the front end when they come in confused or not, first of all, I want to have good dates with people, right? I don't want to, I want to keep dating them as a client. So let's find out on the front end whether we're going to be a good match. And then let's help them unpack, because we can already tell as part of that vetting whether they're going to be coachable or not. And again, it's not fun to bang your head against the wall. I have a cousin who runs a very successful firm based on the East Coast. And he always says, all money ain't good money. There's none in the world that's worth having an experience that is not pleasurable for both you and your client for a long duration of time. So we tried to deduce that on the front end is what I would say.
So that discernment, let's call that you just described in a shorthand version of the thing, the very eloquent way you explained it, but that discernment, how have you evolved as a leader from year 1 to year 5? I mean, year 1, you were probably just, let's get some revenue in the door and do some stuff. And now it sounds pretty sophisticated the way you just described it. So talk about your evolution as a leader and as an owner from year 1 to year 5 on discernment about client and client fit.
Yeah, I think I want to start by just congratulating anyone who has decided to move into the space of entrepreneurship, right? It's not for the faint of heart. At the same time, you have to be willing to get educated, and you have to remove the fear that may exist inside yourself about what you don't know, right? There's so much that you don't know. So this is an adventure that we're going on, and you have to be willing to take that adventure. You're going to have some successes, you're going to have some failures, but you're absolutely right. When you initially begin, you're just everybody's my client. It's anybody who needs PR. That's not really accurate. You have a specialization likely in a certain area, something that you do well, better than your competition, or something that you enjoy so much that it fuels you. And then you want to try and attract clients that are similar to your previous experiences in places where you've done that well. So I think just the novice nature of not realizing that early on. And I just left a lunch meeting with another entrepreneur where we both talked about the light bulb moment that we had, realizing very early on that you may think you can do all of it by yourself. But that is not how that's going to go if you want to last, especially if you want to scale. And there are so many people who are talented with expertise in different areas that you're often, if you're willing, if you're not afraid to take your hands off that wheel and delegate, you're often going to be able to identify someone who has a skill set better than yours to be able to service that client and have that client leave delighted.
I love that. I'm going to come back to hands off the wheel in just a second. So I love the phrase riches in the niches, that agencies that specialize and that focus and they can articulate the way you did is that we do X for Y, and we're really clear about doing X for Y. I work with a lot of younger entrepreneurs that are starting their first firm and they're in their first 1 or 2 years, and they all say, well, we're a full service agency. And with their 3 employees, they say that they're a full service agency. And so reflect back to me, you're thinking about that notion of riches in the niches and really being experts in one or a few select disciplines or marketplaces. So think about and react back to me on that notion of riches in the niches.
I love the notion. I'm thinking back on those early days of being in early. I still feel like I'm in early days, but the first year, for instance, that sounds really scary because when you say the word niche, I think to most people they hear dearth or lack or scarcity, when that's really potentially like your secret sauce space, right? Because if you can understand that pain point better than anybody else, come with the best solution, keep innovating in that specific area, then now you are like levels and levels above the competition. And then tell everybody so that they know that's your niche area. No one does that better than you, and make sure that that's true. I wouldn't say that we're there as a firm. I think we're on that evolution, trying to get there, because again, when you're small, it is so important to make sure that you're bringing in enough revenue to continue to grow along your journey. The other thing that you're not saying, Bill, that I feel like is there, it's very inherent to the 4-step process that we use in public relations, right? Like good PR campaigns start with really good sound research, really understanding the client, the issue, the topic, the audience or stakeholders. That takes research, which takes time. And I feel like the yesteryear of PR, what I used to hear professionals say a lot is, well, the client doesn't want to pay for that. And so then I'm like, well, then you're just guessing. And how can you do a good job if you're just guessing? You're no more educated than the client. You're just throwing tactics to the wall. I don't think that we can afford to not do some level of preliminary research when we're trying to put together a communication plan that we expect to have be successful. And it's the same mindset around how you get to niche. That's going to potentially take hours of research, spending time with that client or that client avatar, and just really getting very intimate about understanding who they are, what their pain points are, what their needs are, what their day-to-day is like, what their family life is like. If you look across, I'll use the word menu of leaders in a specific industry, you're going to probably find some patterns that will help you as you're trying to niche. So. And I mean, the other thing I would add, oh, sorry, go ahead, you go.
No, go right ahead. No, go, please.
I was going to say, I mean, either the other day, I got excited because me and my husband have never been on a cruise. So I went ahead and booked this cruise online. And then like a couple weeks later, I'm like, I don't have time to be the one to call if we need to change something or if I have a question. Why didn't I get a travel agent? Well, so then I need a travel agent that specializes in cruises in the Caribbean, potentially in these specific locations that I'm going to. Why? Because they already know, they've been to those properties. They can tell you what the best excursions are, the tricks on how to get the best discounts, what time to go to book this restaurant. Like that is the kind of service that you get when you find someone who has niched. So that's the only
Yeah.
other thought I would offer.
Wow, I love that. What a great, what a fabulous example, because you could do it yourself. You could go online and read the forums and pick your way through that, just like a client, in theory, could figure out how to do the things that you do. That it would be slow and cumbersome and probably more expensive if you measure in the waste of time on that. Yeah, that's a great insight and a great perspective that I don't think a lot of people, when they go to market and are confronted with that with a client, that's a great example. But you said it earlier on, picking a niche is scary. There's fear in doing that. And there's my words to reflect what you said around scarcity. If I say I'm this, then what about all that I could do? Is that's fear. So does that resonate with you? Is it, as you go on your journey and become more and more focused into a niche, is fear an appropriate word to talk about? That's scary and you're fearful of that?
I would probably say it's more just the awareness of how important it is to make sure that the revenue is where it needs to be for the kind of business that we are in our current stage of growth, if that's fair. I strategically, when I think about 2025 and beyond, I'd love to get to a place where we have enough time and resources to carve out, your R&D projects, right? Where it's like, okay, let's do some exploration in this area so that we can really, really niche. I think the other challenge I personally have, and maybe there are people who can commiserate with this, is that I came out of leading teams that for organizations that never afforded me the luxury to niche, right? I always had to be a generalist. Because that's the nature of the beast. I feel like when you're a leader sometimes, and then especially in PR, those teams are often understaffed and under-resourced. So you just don't get afforded the luxury to niche. You've got to know the gamut, or you better know where to get the expertise for this particular area that you don't know. But I feel like I've been often in situations where I got a task, and what am I going to do? Tell the CEO no? I'm not. No, I'm going to figure out how to do that. Maybe never wrote an op-ed for a national paper, but this is what is wanted, and I need to figure out how to make this happen. So I think that sometimes when we've come out of roles where that was the requirement, it's difficult to retrain our brains.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think I'm more and more convinced that it is the right strategic decision to focus in and narrow down, because it just makes so many things that much easier. It makes business development easier, the conferences you go to, the podcasts you talk on, the next books you write. It really makes a lot of decisions easier, as opposed to I'll do anything from everybody as long as it involves some level of communication. That seems like a failure. So another meta theme that often comes up is you mentioned taking your hands off the wheel. And so that's kind of code word for delegation. And delegation takes confidence, and the ability to delegate is not something that people easily do, particularly entrepreneurs that founded and started their firm and were there on day -1 till 5 to 10, 15 years later. So talk about your journey of letting go, of delegation, take the hands off the wheel. I think I heard you say good team and great staff. So talk a little bit about letting go and how that's scary, but also beneficial.
Both, right? I think about when I got there, Bill, and it was in the middle of my training with the Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Businesses program, which I graduated from in December of 2021. Amazing program. I don't know if enough people realize that it's there. It's completely free. Goldman Sachs finances it all if you get accepted. They fly you out to New York for your 1 week of you put together your business pitch, you practice that in front of the execs. But the program, the national cohort that I was in, really took us from soup to nuts, right? Like it was, let's work on your financial literacy acumen for business. Let's understand how to break this P&L apart from start to finish, and your balance sheet and your cash flow management. process, and let's talk about what you want to look for when you're bringing good people on the team. And let's just have a real conversation about the fact that if you're going to scale, it can't just be you. And the way that I love how they did that. And it was really through storytelling opportunities that we got to experience through other entrepreneurs who had to learn it the hard way, bumped their head. And we had one, I remember this speaker who literally said he spent his, last dollars just bringing somebody in, and it was the best decision that he ever made. And so I do think, again, going back to my own personal experience of not having the luxury of specializing and having to be a generalist in previous roles, that the naivete of believing that you can do it all on your own initially just maybe exists because you don't know what you don't know. But if you think about the full trajectory of what you're trying to build in this new asset that is your business, I think it can open your mind up to, if you're going to get to reach those possibilities, then you're going to have to think a little bit differently about how things are structured, and you're going to have to take your hands off the wheel.
Yeah, absolutely. That's it's so great that that the Goldman program can give you that practical expertise. So let's talk about that program and kind of chicken or the egg. So did you want to be an entrepreneur before Goldman, or did Goldman help convince you to be an entrepreneur? So talk about sort of the sequence of your decision-making relative to that training program, kind of somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, I was in it. I started the firm in August 2019. I got into that program in September of 2021. But to answer your question more specifically, I like to say I heard myself say, because that's what it felt like. I was in a job interview, and probably, I think maybe sometime in 2010, I was being actually recruited. And at the time I was working for the federal government. It was to lead a PR firm that was privately owned by someone else. And then I heard myself say, because I also was thinking along the lines of, hey, if I do this, I'm going to have some equity in the game, but that really got me to thinking about, hey, what about like all the skill sets that I'm honing? If I learn the business part, I could probably do this on my own one day. And then I would say too, my personality is such that I love to lead. I'm the firstborn. So I got all the cups that say bossy and all that. I like to lead. I like to have some control over my destination. And then I take very seriously the people that I bring in to a team with me, that it's also my job to make sure that they're good. I guess that's the most simple way to put that. So having the ability and flexibility to be able to call the shots in that arena, it was always something that was very attractive to me. And so it took me 9 years to press go on the lever. I got the LLC though in 2017. So it was this, inherent desire that never went away, and finally got to bring it to life in August of 2019.
So I heard about your cousin, but is there entrepreneurship in your family?
Probably not my immediate, well, at least not that I probably understood at that time. I mean, my grandparents always owned rental property, and on my husband's side, like I learned later, like he has an uncle who went to medical school, and how the family paid for was starting this restaurant, and they own this restaurant. And his dad always had rental properties that he remembers working on probably as early as being like 6 or 7 years old, like cleaning stuff out of the rental properties. So I think at least we, to some ancillary degree, had always seen it. But we're certainly first generation entrepreneurs in this household. And so I'm glad you asked the question, because I think that once you start down that road of thinking about how you can build a legacy with something like a business that you create, I don't have any children who want to do anything in communication. I have a cybersecurity dude, a neuroscience major, and the youngest wants to be a pilot. So I don't think anybody's going to be taking over any PR work in this house. But what we're learning is certainly information that we can share with our children. And I think that, it has multiple benefits, just because just the financial literacy piece of it has been all new to us, and that's important for a lifetime. And then there's all the lessons that you learn when you're running a business. I think of it as akin to like all of our kids played sports, and there's so many lessons that come from being on a sports team that have nothing to do with being out on the field, whether it's football or they all ran track. The oldest played basketball too, so he was 3 sports. The youngest, when my husband told him to go to basketball tryouts, he just never went, didn't tell him, but but he's certainly tall enough. But to the point is we always kept them involved in sports because it helped them learn how to work with others, how to get through a challenge. There's so many other benefits holistically that come from being involved with that I think you also find when you're in entrepreneurship.
Yeah, that's great. But what I love about the community of owners that we're in, but also just entrepreneurs in general, is there's so much generosity and sharing. And I'm sure you would say that Goldman experience was nothing but generosity of sharing, and you've built relationships that are incredibly valuable.
For sure. Yeah.
As a female leader, I was with the woman who's the president of my firm now, and she's running it to let me go do fun things like this with you, is she has reflected and was kind of bemoaning the fact that there is another woman in a client engagement. The details don't matter, but has really sharp elbows. And she is making it very difficult on my president to do her job. And there is this stereotype of women being in competition and not doing kind of what men would do, of sort of more of sort of a brotherhood culture to sort of let's all help and go along. Is that your experience? Do you resonate with that? Or how do women, or how should women help and work together in the communications field or just entrepreneurially in general?
Yeah, that sounds like a very specific situation, but I would agree, and I lament when I see it, that there are instances where I was in a meeting probably yesterday and I guess my whole thought process in a meeting with this other woman in particular, I like to use this metaphor where I talk about going to the gym, right? Like when I'm going to the gym, I go to the gym. I got my goals for why I'm at the gym. I get on the treadmill, but every now and then, like, I realize that like the person on the treadmill next to me is like trying to see if they can go faster than me. Or like, I didn't realize we were in a treadmill competition. I just want to do a good job at what I'm supposed to be doing, and that's losing the 10 pounds I need to get rid of. So I do think that some of that is there. I always have to remind myself of what I just said. Like, my journey is my journey. People may think they understand how my journey got to be my journey, and I'm the only one who knows that, in undergrad, I didn't have a car and I had to walk through 2 feet of snow to get to the grocery store to work to help pay for my bills that I had at the time and maybe save up for a car. It's like this may look pretty, what you see right now, but you have no idea what it took to get to this point. And I'm very content with my journey being my journey and not having to create a competition with someone else. I mentor a number of other Black women of color in PR, very quietly, very privately.
In town or all across the country?
Oh, it's all over. Like, I'll get people that will just refer. I mean, I have a young lady right now that I never met in person that's in New Orleans, and she's from Texas, and she's trying to land her first PR job. Like, we've never even been on a Zoom. We've been on at least 3 phone calls while I help her map that out. I feel like I owe that to the industry because, well, A, because I don't feel like I really ever had it solid. But B, because it is hard.
For yourself.
Right. Like, I never experienced it. I worked, my first 12 years in career was at Corps of Engineers. So my mentors, and not that I didn't have them, but they were often older white men. But that's different than being able to share a plight with somebody, right? Like, who really understands like your cultural background. And I think it's a lot less intimidating to them to be able to have very candid conversations about their challenges. But I'm only bringing that up, Bill, because you brought up the thing about like, how do we as women support each other better? I think we have to think about the obligation that we have to pay it forward. I think that we have to think about the obligation that we have to support one another, and to realize that we're each on our own individual journey. The other last thing I would say is, especially when you're talking about a work situation, like, we're all hopefully here for the same mission and the same vision to move this thing forward. And I would say that it is important to us to stop and gently remind ourselves of that. Do we want to thwart the mission for our own personal vendetta and cause it to fail? Like, is that worth it? So just maybe a little bit of maturity. And I'll say this because I know some of the women that I'm really good friends with are in their late 60s, 70s. And we get older, but not always more mature. Is that okay to say?
You bet. Yeah.
So I think we could do better. I think we can sometimes do better.
Yeah, that's great. As you're doing the mentorship and talking to people in the industry, are they, you mentioned the person in New Orleans, that's to get a job. Are they entrepreneurs or are they seeking to be employees?
No, she just got her degree. She just got her master's degree.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Are there common themes of questions that are coming to you from those that you're mentoring? Can you put them into buckets?
I think it's just because they're coming because they're often in environments where there's no one who looks like them in leadership. And so they don't feel that psychological safety to be vulnerable or to say like, this is what I'm facing, like, or they're trying to even figure out how to map out their career path. Like, how do they climb a ladder? It might be advice as simple as, well, have you ever thought about like taking a leadership program? Like you've got your terminal degree, but what have you done to prepare to lead? Or who have you sought out to potentially work directly under who's really good, who does what you want? It's kind of like, the early stages of being an entrepreneur. You don't know what you don't know. But one of the things I've personally done are things like the Goldman Sachs program. I'm regularly in a room full of other entrepreneurs, and Bill, that's often a room full of older white men, maybe with a couple of women. But just being able to be in spaces like that where I can hear other challenges that people have had and how they have overcome them to build their own businesses is something I wouldn't get if I weren't in those rooms.
So obviously, as a woman of color, how does that unique perspective impact your counsel to clients? And I don't mean, well, I guess let me just stop there. How does the way you show up for clients, how would it be different than your perception of the way that I would show up as a white man and providing counsel? Is there a difference that you observe?
I think it probably depends on the situation analysis, right? Like, so I'll give you an example of, I had a client a couple years ago that was experiencing some employee, how can I categorize this? Some internal employee disruptions, and it revolved around a situation with a woman of color. And so the leadership at that time was, they really wanted to rectify the situation. They really wanted to quell, I guess, the drama, if you will, that was happening internally. And some of it I would probably deduce had to do with leadership decisions. But what I feel like I was able to bring as a woman of color is a perspective that they potentially hadn't considered about why the woman of color who was the one who was expressing her grievances at the time, just getting to the root of being able to empathize with someone who's in a situation that you've never been in can be difficult, right? Like I think being able to have that perspective and to go, oh, well, we hadn't considered it or looked at it that way. Whether they agree with it or not, it's like, well, you have an opportunity to hear it and to figure out what you want to do with it. And you maybe never thought about these things. So I think that is why if organizations truly care to peel back those onion layers because they want to be better organizations, because they want to provide better customer service, that there's a lot of strength in making sure that you have diversity across teams. I mean, I think about a lot of the PR faux pas that we see. I mean, you look at them on the surface and the very root of it is like, who approved that? How did that even ever make it out the door? And I think it's not intentional. It's just that the blinders are on because that's not, somebody else could look at that and not see what another person who may have had a different background sees right away.
Yeah. And so we've talked a lot in the podcast about DEI and DEI programs, and that's become so politicized and almost, I could be provocative and say just sort of bastardized and either you love it or you hate it. The fundamental point is the point you just made, is that if we could look at things through different lenses, we would probably have different outcomes. And so that to me is kind of what DEI should be, not this sort of touchstone around wokeness or not woke or things like that. And that's really sad that it's really sort of become that in this sort of environment of today. Can that be over-indexed? Can we, because we start as humans and then Americans, and then we sort of can sort of segment down. In your counsel to clients, clearly you are who you are. Does it apply in all situations, or does simply there are just some truths about being a great practitioner that need to pull through? See the distinction I'm trying to make?
Oh, wow. You know, this is what I will share with you that I feel like has sometimes that I've run into personally as a challenge for me as a woman of color. I think so often, it's so interesting. Often I'll get approached to do work that probably I'm being considered for because I'm a woman of color, right? And it's like, well, we're still building an economy, and I can give you maybe some aspect of that or figure out, but that shouldn't matter. So I bring it up because I think about even working at a place like Corps of Engineers, right? Like I was there for 12 years. We would go to public meetings all of the time, at least, 2-3 times a year. And the rooms were filled with white people because we were in like Fort Peck, Montana. We were in South Dakota. I remember one time Bill getting on an elevator and I saw the janitor and his eyes just popped out of his head like, oh man, I haven't seen a black person here in forever. It was kind of funny. But I just bring it up because I feel like on this side of the world, people are stereotyping to some extent. So most of my coworkers at Corps of Engineers were older white men, most of them. I mean, when I was there, I don't know what the demographics of it looks like now. There were about 1,200 employees, and I want to say maybe like 35 to 40 were people of color across 10 states who worked there. And so I think sometimes for some people, it may have been difficult to think about me elevating to any level of seniority because maybe they hadn't seen. I just do think that they struggled with it because, and then also I'm not an engineer too. I'm a communications professional. So I do wonder sometimes if we don't, as a firm, run into that because it's kind of like, well, let's pick them to do something where we need to like diversify the audience or instead of thinking about our expertise and what we bring regardless of if that's necessary or not.
Right. In my experience in just the interactions that you and I have had is your course on PR or the way you would counsel clients, obviously informed by who you are. We all have that based on our own experiences, but it seems like in communications, it's pretty good. It's universally good advice, regardless of who it's coming from. And I grew up in politics and in crisis communications, and nobody cared what color the life raft was. They just wanted a life raft.
There's that part. Yeah. We just
as you go on your cruise, get ready. Nobody cares what color the life raft is.
Yeah. No, you're spot on, right? I think I got questions when I transitioned out of corporate communications at a food company, a global food company, like global food recall notifications, different kinds of crisis. They weren't all food related. But coming out of that to lead the communication strategy at the school district that I went to as a kid that I graduated from. And the skill set is the same. Like, yes, I'm going to have to learn this school district. I'm going to have to memorize who all the principals are at all 90 of these schools. But the skill set is transferable. We're still going to follow the 4-step process. We're still going to have a digital footprint. We still got to make sure that we've got our brand together so that we can articulate it through our advertising, through our PR, through our marketing. The skill set is transferable, but I think it's, again, people who aren't inside of this discipline, they just don't understand it enough. I guess I don't. And I don't mean that to sound condescending. I just think it's a different kind of discipline than most people are familiar with. Yeah.
So we touched on generosity, touched on your mentorship, and obviously Goldman. You are an author, and you wrote a book. And it's a great book. We'll put it in the show notes. Chart Your Path. I'm looking at it on my screen over here. 9-step method to getting unstuck. Why write a book? How has a book served you?
It's a great question because that was not my intention when when I embarked on the journey. I will tell. So what happened was I was transitioning out of a full-time professor of practice role that I concurrently worked whilst building the firm. So for the first couple of years, which is kind of nice because it gives you a little bit of breather while you're trying to build the revenue up. I came out of the school district and started Avant Solutions in August of 2019. And immediately went into the classroom. But I've always taught. I've taught since about 2016, adjunct. I love teaching. That fuels me to be able to like help people along their own journey, right? So I went through a year working with a career and life coach because I really I felt like I needed something that helped me to get over whatever it was in my head that was miring me up to just go, right? Like, I feel like there's this invisible inertia sometimes when you're trying to get to a new level of something that you have, like, you don't just do it. Maybe some people do and they don't have any fear, but that wasn't me. And I don't even know that I can articulate
they're typically lying in my experience, but yeah.
Yeah, it's like what is this? Like right? Like I can barely articulate, but there's some invisible thing here. I need to be able to like retrain my brain. And I don't know, I've said that a couple of times, but I don't know a better way to describe it. So I spent a year with a life and career coach in a cohort with about 12 other women all across the nation, some out of the country, building myself up. And so a couple of my friends had written books, and so I got an opportunity to talk to them about that journey. And one of them plugged me in with the company, the self-publishing company that he had used. I think they were early in their stages of really trying out this proof of concept. And so I got on a Zoom meeting with the head of the company. So he's like asking me about like what, I would want to write about. And he's got this whole little screen up and he's typing all this stuff up on the screen. And I'm asking him questions. He's asking me questions. Unbeknownst to me, like this guy's building an outline for my book during the initial consultation session. And he's like, great, you have a preliminary outline. Go ahead and enroll in our cohort. And I'm like, I don't have time to do this. This was in January of 2023, the top of January of 2023. Yeah. And so I got enrolled in the cohort and got it done. And it wasn't easy because you're doing all the other things, like trying to find the time to carve out. And I would find it any and everywhere that I could. I'd be like out on the gazebo for a couple hours while my husband was watching football and talking to my son. And I'd have my headset on working on, or over my mom's visiting her. So you find the time. It was kind of something that I would like to say I happened up on, but at the same time, it was something that I always wanted to do. Like it's been on my bucket list forever. Ever since I was about 9 years old, I was always like, I'm going to write a book one day. So one less thing on the list. I know that I will do it again because I'm a writer.
I was going to ask, do you have a second one in you?
I know that I do. I don't know what it is exactly yet. I kind of maybe have an idea, but I'm not married to it yet. But I'm a writer, right? Like I've ghostwritten for years. I love that whole feeling of like figuring out how to capture an executive's voice. I'm writing for one right now. I have been writing for this person for about 5 years. And it's funny because every now and then he'll be like, now this is really scary. You sound exactly like me. But just writing for the fuel of how you get to a place in a space where you hit a zone is just, something that has always kind of given me a little bit of additional adrenaline boost. And so it puts me in my happy place. And so I love when I get the opportunity to do it. I'm still looking for a really good writing residence course that I can take one day. That's another to-do that I want to put on the list that I'd love to get to one day. But I'm glad that I got over the finish line for that first one. And one day
that's great. I look forward to the second one. So the book's on the website. So let's talk about it at a very practical level. Does the book, obviously, in the way you just explained it, met personal needs and personal goals? How does the book, as a marketing tool, support or expand your agency? And is there a linkage there? I clearly see it personally, but what is the linkage from a lead gen business development growth standpoint for the firm?
I think for me, Bill, it has extended, unbeknownst to me too, some invitations to get on stages, to speak to people. And I don't know if I knew that was coming. And I'm like, well, I like that. You can tell I like to talk. So that's kind of cool to get the opportunity to do that. And then we obviously have training that I give that comes out of Avant Solutions anyway. So sometimes
On
people
the
will
topics
ask,
of the book, on the topics
no,
from the book.
PR topics, but they'll also want
Okay, got it.
books. So it
Yeah,
might
great.
be like I might be doing media training, or a client might want a storytelling training workshop, but they also want books. And it doesn't matter that the book is not directly about PR. It has some PR metaphors in it. But I think the other piece, though, that I probably didn't realize as I was going through the journey is, and this is what my life coach was, where she was kind of trying to nudge me to be, I think, vulnerability. Like I feel like for years I've struggled with vulnerability, meaning like sharing a little bit more about who I am as a person, because that just felt so, I guess, probably culturally too, when you don't grow up being encouraged to do that, you don't inherently do it. And so everything for me is business. Like, I mean, I've had to learn that, like, depending on like the cultural setup of an organization, like you might go to a meeting, but you really need to small talk for the first 10 minutes. And I came out of a regimented military culture where I would go in sometimes to meet with an executive and be like, okay, then, and they'd be like, wait, stop. Who are you? Like, what?
Let's chat a bit.
Right. And so I think that also has allowed people an opportunity to say, oh, this person is also a person. They're not just a robot that does PR work. And maybe I connect with them on these things. I had someone to send me a text message this morning who wants to go to coffee, who just finished the audiobook. And I'm getting the impression that it must have unearthed some internal either desires that they have, or that whole invisible inertia thing, and they just want to talk deeper. So to me, that was the intention, right? Like I'm hopefully am helping myself, because right, like I'm on this journey too. I've hopefully talked myself into being adventurous enough to stay on this journey and to try other journeys in life and to get rid of fear. But I've also hopefully done that for others.
That's great. Can you point to a client? Can you point to a client that the book made the difference? Did it ring the cash register because of the book? Or did someone find you because of that? It's like very straight line. I'm looking very straight line.
Yeah, I don't know that that's happened yet. No, I think that clients come, or sometimes it is to some extent a lead generator, and they're like, let's buy books. This is a topic that my employees also need to read about too, or maybe they're stuck in terms of coming up with new ideas. There was an article that I posted on my LinkedIn yesterday, completely serendipitous, but it was about I believe it was a Gallup survey about employees who feel stuck. Like there's a certain percentage of employees across the nation who right now are saying they feel stuck.
Sure.
And so I think the more opportunities that I have to talk about the journey that I've been on and the 9 steps that I kind of discovered about how I go from stuck to unstuck, that my life coach helped me unearth. I think those are the people who will give that direct line. But I can't say right now that it's been that yet, but I think it's coming.
Yeah, that's great. That's fabulous. That's fabulous. One of the things that we talk about a lot on the podcast, or just sort of organically comes up, is firing people and the choices that we have to make as owners, either for economic reasons or performance reasons. I'd just love to get your pearls of wisdom with the grace-filled leadership that you obviously have. What are your thoughts about terminations and either for economic reasons or performance reasons or whatever reasons? I'd just love to hear, the Monique point of view on terminations.
Full disclosure, I've never, ever terminated anybody. I've never had to. I do want to offer an adage that one of the instructors that I've had in business courses always offers to the class. And he says, be slow to hire and be quick to fire. And he's just that straight to the point. I've never had to terminate anyone. I feel like I set the parameters. I've come on to teams. I've come on to lead a team where, I do what you're supposed to do. The first 90 days, like, don't change stuff. Just observe. Just take really good, thorough, comprehensive, copious inventory of what's happening right now. Because it's kind of like we're baselining, right? Like, this is what's happening now. And I know this is what good looks like, and this is not it. So now let's set expectations and make sure that each person understands what is expected of them. And through that exercise alone, my personal experience is that people self-identify to just make the decision to leave. So I've never fired anybody. I've had people who maybe they say bad things about me when they leave, or I'm too intense, or I expect too much, or what, I don't know. None of that has ever come back to me. But I have a certain bar and a certain expectation, and I live up to it, and I role model it, and I need everybody on my team to do the same.
And folks just sort of self-select.
That's been my experience.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, boy, I wish we could all be so fortunate of that. How's your 2024 been? Has this been a good year, average year? What's your take on 24?
It's been a good year. I'm very pleased with growth this year. Growth is incremental. Like, I feel like for me sometimes it's too slow, but then I look at the numbers and I'm like, that's not slow. but it's moving at a pace that I still feel like I have good balance. I haven't always felt like that in jobs that I've had in the past. And so I feel like it's at a good pace, that it's incremental, that I have a game plan for growing to the next level that I desire to have this business grow to. And so it's just running that plan.
Yeah. Perspective and thoughts on 2025 as you look out, either your pipeline or what you see in the macro economy. What are your perspectives for the industry in 2025?
Yeah, I'm excited about the technological advances that we've experienced even in the last 2 years, and some of the breathing room that they have afforded to us as PR professionals. There's so many tools in the toolbox and different toys that we can leverage to deliver the work that our clients need us to deliver. I think, it's so interesting in terms of macroeconomy and what will happen. I think a lot of that we're going to find out probably when we're in Q1. At least that's my thought, because I don't think any of us really knows what to expect when we have the administration transition.
It's a fuzzy picture right now.
It's very fuzzy. I mean, even as I'm talking to friends I have who work inside a federal government, that's the same sentiment I'm getting from them. Like, maybe some of them are a little nervous and some of them are like, yeah, this is just another transition, but I don't feel like anybody's crystal ball is giving them a solid answer. I think we're all going to find out pretty much concurrently.
Yeah, I'm seeing, absolutely. That's the sentiment I'm seeing. People are both on the client side and on the agency side, sort of slow to make decisions, slow to hire. Just give me 90 days to get the compass a little bit more true. And so, I think everybody's kind of being pretty cautious.
I would agree with that.
As a wrap up, so I love to think about leaders and humans in this context of mountains, sort of the first mountain and then our second mountain. And so for me, my first mountain was my professional communications career at big agency, then doing my own thing. And now second mountain is sort of dialing back but letting me do coaching and the podcast and really trying to share kind of mindset issues. So my second mountain is kind of really about the heart and soul of ownership and entrepreneurs. As you think about your journey, and you are young and incredibly talented, so you have a long way on your first mountain. But do you think about a second mountain? Do you think about after the agency moves on without you? Do you think about those things? Do you think about what that looks like for you?
That's so scary. I try not to. I mean,
That sounds healthy. Denial is always a good idea.
I really love the craft. I really love all of the opportunities that this career field has afforded me. Like, I mean, I think about the fact that when you're in PR, especially if you you graduate in your levels of increasing responsibility. Like, I've always had an opportunity to work with the top leader in the organization, whether that was like Army general or the CEO of a Fortune 500 or the superintendent of the school district. So that gives you access and purview to a whole lot of different things, often like the things that they're experiencing too. And even something like I've taken pictures with Warren Buffett. I know he lives here in Omaha, but that's not usually likely, right? Like, unless you have access. the CEO of McDonald's. Just some of the work and the projects that I've gotten an opportunity to work on. If I wasn't in the PR field, I guess I just don't see how they would have been possible. And that's just one piece, right? Like I love the puzzle of writing, of putting together a strategy, of trying to find a solution to a problem. As much as crisis communication is stressful, it's also another puzzle, and it's incredibly fulfilling to be able to help a colleague out of a situation or prevent them from getting into a situation. I feel like a lot of times the work that we do on crisis side, if it's proactive, it's preventative, and no one ever even knows we did it. Right?
Absolutely. We didn't know we were there.
So I haven't thought a whole lot about like what the world looks like when I'm not at the helm. I do need to think about it. Because one day, you know, hopefully if you're building your business to the growth level that you get to that place and space, then you need to have something that fills up your days. I do, though, a lot of volunteering. I do work for church. I'm a president of a nonprofit board. I'm on like 3 other boards. There's plenty of stuff to do, but I still need to, at some point, I still need to find my communication high. Yeah. no matter where I am. So have to meditate on that one, Bill.
Yeah. Well, it's important, and obviously my bias. That's just where I find a lot of people in that space trying to figure that out, because they have wrapped themselves up for 5, 10, 15, 20, 30 years into their firm, and it's kind of all they know at some point. And so it's a challenge to figure it out, both for health and mental health reasons, but also for economic reasons. You know, hopefully you're going to grow your firm and be there 10, 15, 20 years. There's economic value that's tied up in there, and figuring out how to unleash that is really important to figure out and grow. Well, Monique, this has been awesome. Thank you. I love your perspective. Your generous spirit is probably the most obvious. And that does raise the question. Is everything billable? Or how does that compare with your generous spirit? I see you in counseling a client, and you're probably going beyond the scope quite often. Is my hunch correct?
Because you want to do a good job, right? I personally feel like we almost always overservice the client. And I just think that's because we want to do it. No, I don't, because I feel like you never know what that's going to lead to or not, right? Like I'm a big person on like, you reap what you sow, you get out what you put in. It's like maybe that client can't afford to pay this, but some client will be able to one day. I guess I've just never seen that fail. To the extent that we don't go bankrupt trying to support the client, but
don't give it all away.
Right. But if we can, like I have a videography shoot on Friday for a client that I've known for years. It's a friend, but like we're completely over-servicing this client. But it's fun to be able to show him the potential and to help him drive traffic to his business. But also to be able to support a client who wouldn't have a budget to get that kind of support otherwise. So,
and that's one of the great things of owning your own thing, is to be able to make those kind of decisions. That's the best. That's the best.
For sure.
Well, I was wrapping up before, but got distracted with your generosity. So Monique, thank you very much. Really appreciate it. We will leave links about the book and details about your firm in the show notes. And I encourage people to reach out and follow up with Monique. Monique, thank you very much. It's been great having a conversation.
Thank you. This is so much fun. And I look forward to listening to H&H podcast in the future.
Well, thanks for hanging in and continuing this great conversation with owners like Monique. One of the things that I thought upon reflection is really valuable in this conversation is the notion of delegation. She talked about hands on the wheel and the ability to take your hands off the wheel as an owner and finding others to be able to share some of the load as a leader. We talked about in the context of tourism and about planning a cruise. And that, finding someone else with the expertise was really valuable. So I hope you found value in the conversation with Monique. She's someone that I look forward to staying in touch with and watching her and her firm grow. So thank you so much for joining us on the Heart and Science of Creative Leadership. I look forward to seeing you again next time as we talk to other owners about ownership. Thanks so much.